You are listening to a Freedom Student Ministry podcast.
We're talking about new beginnings, but I want to remind you guys that we're here tonight because of Jesus. That's why we're gathered today. We're not doing this to throw a fun event. We're here because of Jesus. That's why we're here. And each of us leaders are here because we're really excited about what Jesus is doing now in 2018. And I was thinking about this yesterday. I was really struck by the fact that it's 2018. And there's been a lot of history before 2018. You know what I'm saying? Not just your lives, not just my life, but thousands of years of history and thousands of years of people being in relationship with Jesus and being changed by him. And I thought that was really cool as I was thinking, whoa, it's 2018, which means that 2018 years ago is around when Jesus went up to heaven, right? Is that the date? I just had a brain fart. Or was it when he was born? Anyway, Jesus lived 2018 years ago, which is really intense. And then there was time before that, right? And all these events were leading up to right now in 2018, when God would know that you guys would exist, I would exist. It blows my mind. So I wanted to share it with you guys. And we're going to talk about who our trust and our hope is in. If you look up there, it says, in whom do we put our trust? And that could also say, in whom do we put our hope? Okay? That could also say that, because that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And kind of when times are tough, where do you go? When times are tough in your life, where do you go mentally, physically, emotionally? We're in this series called New Beginnings, so you might think that's kind of weird. Why are we talking about a subject that's not really a New Beginnings? But what I was thinking is maybe this is a fresh concept for you tonight, that when you are in pain, when you are hurting physically, emotionally, mentally, where do you go? The fresh concept is go to Jesus. Maybe that's new for you, or you're like, oh yeah, duh, I knew that, but I haven't been doing that. So tonight's a night of new beginning for you and for me, and to think about where we go in our hour of need. Some things that cause me to be overwhelmed are when things are out of my control, and I want them to be. Do you identify with that? That overwhelms me. When my jobs have a lot of demands and I feel like I don't have time to fulfill those demands by the deadline, that overwhelms me. But I haven't been your guys' age for a few years, and I haven't been in school for a little while, so I'm curious, what are some things that overwhelm students your age? Homework? The big test, the SAT? M? That's overwhelming. Anything. Life. Wow, yeah. Yeah. So you're overwhelmed by that because it seems like a big thing. Yeah. Yeah. What about family-related stuff? What is overwhelming in family? Yeah, happened in my family. Anything else? Anybody besides Corbin? Corbin, I love that you have answers. I want to give other people opportunities. In family, what else overwhelms? Charlie's. Yeah, please. Okay, everybody's different personalities and stuff. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, a few of you can identify with that. So, what are some things that you or other people run to when you're overwhelmed? Okay. Rec room? Games? Books? What else? Prayer? Phones? Yeah. Video games? Sleep? Isolation? Those might be some things that people run to. So in the past DOS days, I have had some stuff go on in my life that's left me feeling super overwhelmed and anxious. The worst anxiety I think I've ever experienced in my life. It's been nuts. And yesterday from about noon until the evening, I would be working or like mostly working, and I would want to run from my feelings. You guys have probably experienced that before. And I'd be sitting there working, and all of a sudden, like the rush of those overwhelming feelings would hit me, and I would think that maybe a chocolate bar would make me feel better. And I could feel my brain going, chocolate, that'll make me feel better. But I knew that wasn't the answer, right? And then I'd be sitting there working, I'd kind of push that in my head. I'd be sitting there working, and then I'd be like, the rush of feelings would come back, and I'd be like, oh, if I could just go home and take a nap. I just want to sleep. I just want to run from this and just sleep, and then maybe I'll wake up and it'll be, different. But I knew that wasn't going to work, right? I'd tried that before. It wasn't going to work. And then I'd feel that again, and then I would think, oh, man, like a big meal of like carbs, like pancakes or something, that's going to make me feel better. Like I could feel my mind wanting to do that. And I was like, that is not going to work. I just know it's not. I'm 31 now. I've kind of learned that those things don't work. And I realized that those were temptations from the devil. I'm going to explain that. That sounds really intense, but they're temptations from the devil. I even gave in yesterday, and I bought a big cup Reese's. You know what those are? And I ate it. It tasted real good. But it didn't help. It didn't take my anxiety away at all. It did not help me one bit. Like, all it did was satisfy a food craving, and not even that much, because when I finished it, I wanted another one. But I didn't need another one. So what does the devil do, though, but try to take our focus off of God? He will look for any way to tempt us so that we'll follow that temptation and actually act on it, because we think that what he's tempting us to do is going to make us feel better. We think it's going to solve every single problem. And we think it's going to make our situation like a mountaintop experience. When we finally realize that when we actually do that, like when I actually eat the Reese's, like I did yesterday, it makes me feel emptier than before. And it doesn't help my situation at all. So I was tempted to choose to do something that was going to fulfill me and make me feel better. And I went through with it, and it didn't make me feel better. So it's like an empty promise. That's what the devil offers. That's all he offers, are empty promises. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the good news in all of this is that Jesus actually identifies with our feelings of being overwhelmed more than a human could identify with them, because all of us humans have felt overwhelmed at one point or another, but Jesus is the only one that actually truly identifies. He goes, yeah, I experienced that, and here's what I did. He's the only one that can help us with that. But what I want you to know, though, is that feelings are okay. Like, it's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel anxious. What I'm saying, though, is what are you going to do about it? How are you going to act on those feelings? Are you going to allow the devil to tempt you into doing something that's not going to help? Or are you going to do this other route that we're going to talk about tonight? I want to read Mark 14. He took Peter, James, and John along with him, so this is Jesus, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. Jesus did. He said, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He said to them, stay here and keep watch. Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from him. So what that means is he fell to the ground like he was by himself. He was away from the guys. So the events that were leading up to this moment in Jesus' life were really intense, and there were a lot of them. So like one of the events was he told his buddy Peter that Peter was going to deny Jesus 3 times. So his good friend was going to say to other people, I don't know who Jesus is, 3 times. Isn't that crazy? It's like your good friend saying, I don't know who Peyton is, 3 times. Like being legit, though, not like goofy, being legitimate, saying, I don't know who that person is. And that really hurt Jesus, His friend was turning his back against him. Another thing that happened was, and this was before he told Peter about this, is Jesus had his last meal with his closest friends. And he told them, I'm going to die soon. That's an intense moment. Another thing that happened is that he knew the authorities were looking for him and they wanted to arrest him. So he was kind of a fugitive. That's intense. And ultimately, he knew that the cross was coming, which was an amazing event for us, but caused Jesus physical and emotional pain and agony and suffering. So this was a bunch of stuff in Jesus' mind, and he goes and he gets alone with God, and he says, God, can you take this from me? He's overwhelmed. Right, Jackie? So I just want to make sure you were awake. I don't know. So Jesus knows our mess. Think about your mess in your life. Jesus knows our troubles. Jesus knows our feelings. It's really encouraging to me. He knows how our feelings feel because he's experienced the gamut of human emotion. He's experienced it all. And he gives us an example of what to do when our feelings are so overwhelming that we can't even function. Have you been in that spot before? When your feelings, when your worries, when your concerns, your stresses are so overwhelming, the situation around you is so hard to bear that you don't know how to function. Maybe you haven't experienced that yet, and praise God. But if you ever do, this is what I want to explain to you, that God went to the Father. He went to God, and he prayed in the middle of his mess. He didn't eat a bunch of comfort food. He didn't avoid his pain and feelings by playing video games. He didn't avoid his pain and feelings by taking drugs, like some people do. He didn't avoid his pain and feelings by drinking alcohol, like some people do to numb feelings. He went to God, and he explained to God his troubles, and he trusted that God would help him. And Jesus, who is our ultimate example, is the one who did that. He's our example, which means everything that he did, we can do. So we can do that. In the midst of our craziest, most troubled, insane times, we can go to Jesus and find rest and healing and peace. He's the one that can give that to us. And I have a question for you guys. What do you do when all your crutches are gone? And I'm going to explain crutches to you in this instance. So, the context of crutches today. So you know when you break or sprain your ankle or knee or something and you need crutches, you rely on those crutches to take the place of your injured leg. You lean on them and you don't use that injured leg. So I'm talking like when you're hurting inside, when you're tempted to use different things like I was yesterday to fix your pain, and you try to bury that, like you're trying to use those as crutches. Okay? Now, when you're stressed, think about it to yourself. Do you eat too much? Do you just overeat, or do you eat a bunch of junk food? That's happened to me before, for sure. When I've been stressed, I've done that. Do you watch too much TV when you're stressed or overwhelmed? Do you play too many video games? Do you sleep? Do you withdraw into your room and not communicate with anyone? Now, eating, watching TV, video games, sleep, those aren't bad. What I'm saying is, in the moment when you're stressed, you have two choices. And if you choose to use one of those things to fulfill you and to numb your pain, that's not going to help. And it's not trusting God. And that's not cool to him. And it never helps us feel better, ultimately. In the moment, we might feel okay because we're numb. We can't feel anything. But it doesn't fix the situation at all. If all of a sudden you have none of those to fall back on, imagine that scenario. You don't have TV, you don't have video games, you don't have a room to isolate yourself in, you don't have food. What are you going to do? What if you have nothing to go back on? What do you do when all your crutches are gone? The hope is that you'd go to God. That's what I'm trying to teach you and teach my heart as well tonight, that you would go to God. And the hope is that you would always go to God first when you're dealing with super crazy, overwhelming circumstances or emotions, because he is the one that can help. He is the one that can be trusted. It's true. And a couple things, though, that helped me yesterday in the midst of my overwhelming time, that didn't fix my situation, but definitely helped, that I want to encourage you guys in, is the first one is I ate dinner with a friend last night. that really helped. Didn't solve my problems. We didn't talk about what was going on in my heart at all, but to simply be with another human and enjoy their presence was really good for me. That's community. That's choosing to be with people even when I'd rather kind of hide in my feelings and my fears and be scared. You know what I mean? That's choosing people. And what I want you guys to know, if you don't hear anything else tonight, this is what I want you to hear, is that when you're experiencing these feelings of fear or stress or overwhelming emotions or anything, you are not alone. You've got to believe that. You're not alone. And sometimes you might be physically alone. You might truly be physically alone in your room or something. It's your job to choose to be with other people in those times, rather than just sulking and sitting in your worry and in your fear. Choose to be with other people, because literally, even though we didn't talk about what was going on in my life last night, like my spirits were lifted. And then it made me feel stronger and made me go, okay, God, let's handle this. Let's take this head on. You know what I'm saying? So just community helped so much. I also had people praying for me. So I let people into what was going on in my life. And it was kind of like they were inside my brain, essentially. You know, like they knew what was going on. I shared with them, and I kept them updated. I was like, this is how I'm feeling, guys. Can you pray for me? Can you pray for this specific thing? It's really bothering me. And they would check on me, and I could be open with them about the things that were going on in those moments. And they really helped me. And because they were actually praying for me, I was encouraged. I knew that they were talking to God about me, and God was going to do something on my behalf. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew that I had people praying for me. That's another example of community that's even more important than just being with people, but being prayed for, because they're going to God on my behalf and on your behalf when you do that with your friends. And then the last thing that I didn't do because it was impossible for me to do, but in other situations for you guys it might be possible, is you could remove yourself from the situation. So it's silly to me sometimes how we don't remove ourselves from situations that stress us out when we can, when we have the option. We stay in them, like we stay in a toxic friendship or a toxic relationship, even though it throws us off and it's bad for us. I don't have any other examples, but you could probably think of some where you haven't left a situation and it's continued to overwhelm you. And if you think about a balloon getting blown up, right, until the point that it explodes, that's like your heart. Like you just keep letting stuff build up and build up and build up and then it explodes, right? But if you took yourself out of the situation, the balloon could shrink back down again and you could be okay. It's interesting how we still don't do that. I want to give you 4 examples from the book of Matthew of when Jesus actually pulled out of situations. Can you believe he did that? He did. Check this out. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on the mountain. And after he sat down, his disciples came to him. He saw crowds, he went to the mountain. Opposite direction. It's in Matthew 5. Now when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to depart to the other side of the sea. So when he saw a crowd around him, he left. He didn't do this all the time. These are just examples I pulled out. Immediately, he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he sent the crowds away. It's another example. And sending away the crowds, Jesus got into the boat and came to the region of Magadan. So Jesus stepped away to be alone with God. That's what he was doing. He wasn't just like, I got to get out of these crowds. He wasn't like having anxiety from crowds. It was just like he had been praying for people. He had seen lots of healings. He was loving people. Now it was time. He knew that he needed to step away and get alone with Jesus, because otherwise that balloon would pop. It would burst and he would have nothing left to give anybody. He needed to go get his strength restored from God. So he did. 4 examples of that. And one more example, my last one tonight, of someone in the Bible going to God when they're stressed or in pain. And this is David. King David. He wrote a lot of the Psalms. And this is something that he wrote to God. And it's been written into a lot of songs. And I've been singing one the past couple days that I really love that this was written into. And it's been helpful to me. So hear my cry, O God. Listen to my prayer. From the ends of the earth I call to you. Question. Sometimes when you're like super overwhelmed and stressed, do you feel like you're in the ends of the earth? Like, do you feel like you're like, I'm lost, I'm gone? I call as my heart grows faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, for you have been my refuge, a strong tower against the foe. I long to dwell in your tent forever and take refuge in the shelter of the wings. For you, God, have heard my vows. You have given me the heritage of those who fear your name. Increase the days of the king's life, his years for many generations. May he be enthroned in God's presence forever. Appoint your love and faithfulness to protect him. Then I will ever sing in praise of your name and fulfill my vows day after day. This is Psalm 61. So, God can be trusted. God exists, and it's possible for you to turn your affection from your fears to God. Stop massaging the fear part of your brain and turn to God. If you are overwhelmed tonight and you want to go to God, that's what this next time is going to be for. We're going to play a song. It's a YouTube video, and you can sit here and listen to it and pray in your head and your heart where you're seated, or you can go to the back chairs where us leaders will be, and you can receive prayer, like if you are overwhelmed and you need God, or if you're just burdened by something and you want to talk about it and be prayed for, or if you've never said yes to Jesus and you want to do that. Like anything, we're here to pray for you, okay? And then, I just ask that you would sit, you'd be quiet, you wouldn't be on your phones at all. If you're going to be